Record disc for talking machines and the like. United States Patent Office, number 1702564. Patented February 19, 1929. William Forse of London, England, assigner to Columbia Phonograph Company Incorporated of Bridgeport, Connecticut, a corporation of New York. Application filed October 17, 1924, serial number 744,257. No drawing. This invention relates to improvements in the connection with the method and process of manufacturing records that are to be used in connection with gramophones and other sound-reproducing or talking machines. The object being to produce a record, the surface of which shall be more permanent in character, smooth and uniform throughout, that will be unaffected by exposure to atmospheric conditions, and be free from the difficulties that have been associated with records produced from the usual shellac mixtures. The invention relates more especially to record discs having an inner core or disc made of a cheaper material than is used for the surface on which the record sound groove is impressed. Discs of this class are constructed in many different ways, some having a cardboard disc prepared with a suitable filler or gum, and then coated on the surface with a high-grade mixture comprising of shellac, pigment, together with certain mineral earths and grays. Another well-known method for making records of this class is by pulverizing a shellac mixture similar to the above, and then dusting the powder by means of a sieve onto one surface of thin paper discs which have been cut about the size of a finished record and treated with a suitable gum to hold the shellac powder when so dusted. A sheet prepared in the above manner is placed with the shellac face downwards on the matrix plate. and the record-forming die. A disc or piece of cheaper material, such as powder earths, clays, and shoddy, bound together with a suitable gum as to form a thermoplastic mass, is softened by the heat and placed on the back of the shellac-coated paper sheet. The other half of the record-forming die is then placed in position, and the whole is subjected to hydraulic or other pressure so as to not impress the shellac surface of the coated paper sheet with the sound record line on the matrix, the cheaper material being extended out to form the inner body of a record disc of suitable thickness and strength for commercial use. Laminated records having a shellac mixture surface as described above invariably have a surface fault in that the record surface is not very stable. Particles of mineral or flock that are too large to compress between the very fine consecutive record grooves and that cannot be properly worked up on the record surface owing to the inefficient mixing alter in shape by shrinkage or expansion, and when exposed to the heat or damp as certain particles that are not sufficiently covered with shellac get loose and form slight projections or recesses, thus producing a microscopically rough surface which, while being passed over by a reproducer stylus, produces undesirable scratching noises. In the manufacture of records in the past, this fault has arisen from the use of flock or other fibrous material in combination with the shellac and other ingredients for the purpose of binding the small particles together, as the particles of mineral earths and the like were not ground fine enough to give sufficient granular surface to enable such to be bound effectively by the shellac. This difficulty has even arisen if only a very small proportion of the unbound material exists. As such, will invariably work up on the surface of the record and break away or give roughness. This serious fault has not up to the present been successfully overcome, owing to the difficulty in preparing a sufficiently fine and powdered record material that is entirely free from large grains of mineral or other material, as grains having a diameter of about 0.18 millimeters would be likely to work loose when in use. This present invention, in connection with the manufacture of records, provides for the reproduction of grains having a maximum size of 0.1 millimeters, and of averaging about 0.025 millimeters in diameter. By this means, the necessity of using flock or other fibrous binding material is eliminated, and the granular surface is sufficient to be tightly bound by shellac alone, but the particles of mineral earths and the like are so small that they do not present a surface rough enough to cause the stylus to vibrate to any audible note. When manufacturing the improved records, there is employed paper sheets that are coated with powder having a maximum granular surface of less than 0.1 millimeters and free from any fibrous materials, and the discs or sheets thus coated are strengthened by using a blacking or core between two of such coated paper sheets made of a cheaper material of any suitable well-known kind. This backing material may contain flock or other binding material, but this backing or strengthening material forms no part of the present invention, while the paper sheets and backing material are of sufficient strength to make the total finished record or disc commercially usable. In carrying the invention into effect in one manner, a powder of the desired fineness is produced by mixing the materials, for instance, mineral earths, resins, and coloring matter, in their correct proportions and in the usual way by first heating and rolling the product out onto slabs. In carrying the invention into effect in one manner, a powder of the desired fineness is produced by mixing the materials, for instance mineral earths, resins, and coloring matter, in their correct proportions and in the usual way by first heating and rolling the product out onto slabs, and then grinding such slabs into a fine powder by passing them through impact mills, rolling mills, or the like. Thus, having secured a fine powder, it is passed into a separating box to enable the fine granules to be separated from the coarser granules by air flotation. The separation is effected by air flotation by passing the powder direct from the grinding mills into a separate box at a point about halfway up its height, and then there is mounted a suction fan or exhaust on top of the separating box above the powder inlet. By the operation of this fan or exhausting device, there is created a partial vacuum which causes the air to be removed from the separating box at a high velocity. This air displacement, when used in conjunction with the apparatus of suitable size, will create a current of air having the necessary force to carry all particles of power entering a chamber which are under a given size. 0.1 mm in diameter, for example, while the heavier particles fall into the bottom of the chamber to be returned by conveyor means back to the grinding mills, where it is reground and repassed through the separating chamber again and again until it is of sufficient size to pass over with the air current into a receptacle adapted to collect the very fine powder which is required for the invention. It must be understood that the action and construction of the powder separating mechanism is described by way of example only, and may be varied in many ways. Or a sieve of suitably fine mesh or any other well-known means for obtaining fine powder of a defined maximum size may be used. The finely divided powdered shellac material thus obtained is dusted by any well-known mechanism means onto the discs or paper of suitable size for forming records. Coated paper sheets, well warm, may then be passed between cold, preferably water-cooled, rollers under pressure to be given an even surface to the powder, and to distribute the powder evenly over the paper disc. This improved cold rolling process has not hitherto been practicable with the coarser-grained powder, owing to the large particles becoming depressed temporarily into the paper sheet and then rising again when released, and forming excretions or irregularities that were damaging to the surface of the powdered sheet. The thermoplastic powder, having the characteristics as described herein, may be used for manufacturing sound record discs in various well-known ways, and although primarily intended for use in combination with paper discs to limit the use high-grade powder in the sound record surface, it must be understood that such finely divided and separated power as hereinbefore described can also be applied to various forms of coal or disc without necessarily using paper sheets. It is to be understood that the foregoing description given to securing a complete adhesion without finely divided homogeneous material without the necessity of using a foreign binding material such as a flock is set forth by way of example or illustration, and not of limitation. And the powder may be comprised of various ingredients and produced in various ways to suit the particular purpose for which it is required. Having now particularly described and ascertained the nature of the invention, and in which the matter Having now particularly described and ascertained the nature of the invention and in what manner the same is to be performed, what is claimed is, Number 1. A sound record comprising of a base of material containing a fibrous binder, the layer of said base into which the record groove is pressed, being of smoother texture than the material of the base, said layer comprising shellac and a granular filler free of fibrous binders, and the granules have a size not exceeding 1. A sound record having an outer layer into which the record groove is pressed, said layer consisting of a comprised dried mechanical mixture of granules composing of shellac and crocus having a size not exceeding 0.1 mm. Number 3. A sound record having a base with fibers therein and an outer layer into which the record groove is pressed, said mixture consisting of a compressed granule mixture of shellac and filler, said mixture being free of fibrous binding materials, and the granules of said mixture not having a size exceeding 0.1 mm. Signed at London, England, this 6th day of October, Anno Domini 1924. William Forse.